Hello again, and welcome back to Year 3 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 28. So last time we read about Deborah, I should say week 28, this is day 1. Last time we read about Deborah and the time that she judged Israel and how the Lord delivered his people by the hand of two women, Deborah the judge and Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, who killed the general of the Canaanite armies as he slept with a wooden tent peg. We talked in another place about how that is understood by the fathers to represent the cross and the Lord's destruction of his enemies, conquering death by means of death. Anyway, but we will leave the rest of the stories of the judges behind and move forward to the book of First Kingdoms, which is also known as First Samuel, depending on what Bible you're reading. Same text, basically, just different name. And in First Kingdoms, or First Samuel, we will see the last two judges, Eli the priest and his successor, Samuel. Samuel, you might remember, although we read this in year 1, very early on, Samuel was the son of Hannah and Elkanah, her husband. Hannah had been barren, unable to bear children, but she had prayed to God for a son and had promised to dedicate that son to the Lord's service. So, after God granted her request and gave her the son, once her son Samuel had been weaned, she brought him to the tabernacle at Shiloh, where we pick up the story in chapter 2, verse 11 of 1 Kingdoms or 1 Samuel. So, then Samuel remained to minister to the Lord in the presence of the priest, Eli. Now, the sons of Eli were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord or for the duties of the priests to the people. When anyone offered sacrifice, the priest's servant would come while the meat was boiling with a 3-pronged fork in his hand, and he would thrust it into the pan, or the kettle, or the cauldron, or the pot. All that the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. This is what they did at Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. Moreover, before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the one who was sacrificing, "Give meat for the priest to roast, for he will not accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." And if the man said to him, "Let them burn the fat first, and then take whatever you wish," he would say, "No, you must give it now. If not, I will take it by force." Thus the sin of the young men was very great in the sight of the Lord, for they treated the offerings of the Lord with contempt. Samuel, meanwhile, was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. His mother used to make for him a little robe and take it to him each year when she went up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. Then Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord repay you with children by this woman for the gift that she made to the Lord." And then they would return to their home. And the Lord took note of Hannah. She conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Now, Eli was very old. He heard all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who served at the entrance to the temple of meeting. He said to them, "Why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all these people. No, my sons, it is not a good report that I hear the people of the Lord spreading abroad. If one person sins against another, someone can intercede for the sinner with the Lord. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can make intercession?" But they would not listen to the voice of their father, for it was the will of the Lord to kill them. Now the boy Samuel continued to grow both in stature and in favor with the Lord and with the people. A man of God came to Eli and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, I revealed myself to the family of your ancestor in Egypt when they were slaves to the house of Pharaoh. I chose him out of all the tribes of Israel," he's talking about Aaron, "to be my priest, to go up to my altar, to offer incense, to wear an ephod before me. And I gave to the family of your ancestor all my offerings by fire from the people of Israel. Why, then, look with greedy eye at my sacrifices and my offerings that I commanded, and honor your sons. Why do you do this? Why do you honor your sons more than me, by fattening yourselves on the choicest parts of every offering of my people Israel? Therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promised that your family and the family of your ancestors should go in and out before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me. For those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me shall be treated with contempt. See, a time is coming when I will cut off your strength and the strength of your ancestors' family, so that no one in your family will live to old age. Then in distress you will look with a greedy eye on all the prosperity that shall be bestowed upon Israel, and no one in your family shall ever live to old age. The only one of you whom I shall not cut off from my altar shall be spared to weep out his eyes and grieve his heart. All the members of your household shall die by the sword. The fate of your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, shall be the sign to you. Both of them shall die on the same day. And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who shall do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. I will build him a sure house, and he shall go in and out before my anointed one forever. Everyone who is left in your family shall come to implore him for a piece of silver or a loaf of bread, and shall say, Please put me in one of the priest's places, so that I may eat a morsel of bread. Now, on the surface of this isn't particularly interesting or relevant. What's perhaps notable about it is that it gives us our first glimpse at how the tabernacle is working in the time of the judges. We saw the tabernacle set up in the Torah, in the books of Moses before, and we had the sense that it was set up once the children of Israel came into the promised land. But we haven't seen how this is working. So now we see how it's working. And it's not working well. The priests have become corrupt. This is what the first portion that talks about the priest servant coming and sticking the fork into the pot while it's boiling and demanding the fat from the sacrifice. The point of all of this is, if we read in the Torah, in the law, in Exodus and Numbers and Leviticus, it is very clearly set out how the sacrifices are to be divided. Part of it, the best part, the part with the fat, is to be burned on the altar, and it is the Lord's portion. Part of it, the part with the sustaining meat, actually, is to be given to the priests, and that is their inheritance, for their livelihood, for them to live, because they don't have land that they inherit. And part of it is for the person making the sacrifice to go and eat it before the Lord, so that there is this sharing of a meal between God and the person making the sacrifice and the priest. But the priests now are coming and demanding the portion that is set apart for the Lord, which means they don't really believe that the Lord is real, or they don't care. They are taking what they want and fattening themselves off of it. And then we see still further that Eli's sons aren't just taking food. We see that they are abusing their power, abusing their station among the people, and using this. When it says they were lying with the women who served at the entrance, this is a euphemism for sexual activity. They are abusing those who have consecrated themselves to serve. They are words fail me. They are exploiting the people that God has entrusted them to care for. And it is for this reason that really we haven't seen this sort of judgment come not just to a city or a people, but to a specific family, because this family has been entrusted with authority and responsibility, and they have abused that and done great harm to the people, and done great harm to the faithfulness of the people, because even those who come, and if you paid attention, the text said, if anyone said, no, I'll give you the portion after the fat is burned, because that belongs to the Lord, the priest would say, no, give it to me now, or I'll do you violence. Which means even the faithful are being scandalized. What they're seeing is that the worship of God is not being conducted by faithful priests. And this will not help the people to stay faithful to God. If the one place that they are commanded to go, allowed to go, commanded to go to worship Yahweh, is a place where instead they find abuse and corruption and violence and sexual exploitation, this is catastrophic. So God's judgment on this Eli and his family is just indeed. Now, there's another piece hidden here, because in the final verses it talks about how God will raise up another priest, a faithful priest, who will do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. I will build him a sure house, and he shall go in and out before my anointed one forever. So what we have to remember, and this is maybe complicated, at the time of King David, the household of this priest Eli, who's a descendant of Aaron's son Ithamar, is disinherited. They do not receive the high priesthood. When David is crowned and when Solomon builds the temple, the high priest is the high priest Zadok, who's descended from Aaron's other son Eleazar. And Zadok's line is identified then as the line of faithful priests all the way down to the time of Christ, when we are told clearly that Zacharias, the high priest, is serving in the temple as priest, and he's of the order of Abijah, who's one of Eleazar's descendants, connected here to Zadok. So, well, this is not explicitly clear. The church has understood, and we are given to understand, that even though the high priests in the temple at the time of Christ, once again, are corrupt, they are taking the money, they are taking advantage of the people in every way at the time of Christ. But Zacharias has a son in his old age to preserve his line. He has a sure house, as the prophecy here says. And his son, John, goes out into the wilderness and prepares the way for the Lord, prepares a faithful people for God, once again out in the desert. And he is the one who encounters, who proclaims, who goes in and out before the Anointed One, before David's descendant, before our Lord Jesus Christ. So even in this rather obscure little passage, we see a glimpse, a foreshadowing, a look forward to the gospel. So that's enough for today. Next time we'll see what's going on and why we keep talking about this little boy Samuel, who's, in the midst of all this evil, is growing up in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. So God bless you all. See you for day 2 shortly.